every one of you has had an experience of healthcare. If you found yourself ill and needed help, you probably had questions like, could you find somebody that would see you? Could they help fix whatever was wrong? And could you afford to pay for it? If you had insurance, you might have wondered, would my insurance cover it? If you didn't have insurance, you might have wondered, can I pay for it out of pocket? Over the last few years, there's been enormous debate and conversation in our country about healthcare and healthcare reform. And without a doubt, the evidence is so strong that our healthcare system is broken. A couple statistics. We spend more money on healthcare in the United States than any other country in the Western world, yet our health outcomes are near the bottom. Health outcomes that really matter, things like infant mortality and longevity. So while there's no doubt that our healthcare system is in desperate need of transformation, and we need to invest in that, it's also critical, I think, that we invest in ideas and innovation outside of healthcare and outside of the healthcare system. Ideas that you and I can do to improve health and well-being in our own lives as well as those around us. So if I were to ask you what well-being means to you, I'm sure I'd hear all kinds of different things. Some of you might say, well, it's body, mind, and spirit, or it's being aligned, it's being balanced, it's being integrated. It's recognizing my individuality. In one word, the word would be whole. Whole person, whole being, attentiveness to the whole person. For the last 10 years or so, I've been really interested in the science underlying well-being and what are the determinants of well-being. Because whether you're a young person, a college student, a mid-career professional, or whether you're a senior that's planning a transition in housing or in jobs, what you hold in common as a human being that's part of the human condition is a deep yearning for well-being. So as I talk today about each of these determinants of well-being, I really invite you to think about how does this work in your own life. So the first determinant I want to talk about is the determinant of health. And when I talk about health, I'm not talking just about physical health. I'm talking about your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health. An important thing to understand is that in many ways, health is literally in your hands. 80 to 90% of how healthy you are has nothing to do with doctors, hospitals, or drugs. It has to do with lifestyle choices that you make every day in your lives. The food you eat, how much you exercise, how much you sleep, and how you manage your stress. A recent study confirmed that when people pay attention to their health and well-being, when they take charge of it, and when they're engaged in their own well-being, they not only have better outcomes, they use about 22% fewer resources. So that's something that's very important to the nation. Now, I'm sure you can all think of people that you know that might have great health, but they still have really poor well-being. And on the other hand, you probably know people that have lousy health, yet they exude well-being in their lives. And that's because there's so many other areas that impact our well-being. And one of those areas that's very critically important in addition to health is purpose, having purpose and meaning in life. There's a statistic that's important to know. What happens when you retire and have no plans? You're at actually very high risk for death. The mortality rate is much higher for people who have no plans. People literally need to have a reason to get up in the morning. So purpose and meaning is something that's important at every age and stage of life. Mark Twain once said in his writings, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you figured out why you were born. So even when people have compromised health, they might have a lot of well-being in their lives because of their deep and abiding sense of purpose. And purpose is not the same as a job or career. While some people might live out their purpose within their job or career, for many people it's something that is much bigger and beyond that. So health and purpose are important. Relationships are important. So important to have people in our lives that love, nurture, and support us, and who we love, nurture, and support. In the United States, there is more loneliness than there is depression. And there's a whole lot of depression. The risks of being lonely are comparable to risks like obesity and hypertension. So real important to think about, do you have a network of people in your life that are supporting you? Community is so important to well-being. And when you think of community, you might think of, well, the infrastructure of the community. Are there roads and bridges and parks and schools and museums? And those things are clearly important. You might think about the economic base of the community. Is it stable? That's important. But it's also real important to look at the social networks in the community and look at the issue of diversity. Does the community embrace diversity and hold up diversity? Lots of evidence that healthy communities are communities where people are not only engaged, but they're also empowered. So community, very important to well-being. Safety and security is important. You might be doing well in all of these other areas of your life, but if you live in fear, fear for whatever reason can immobilize us. So it could be fear of financial issues. Will I have enough money to put food on the table or have a roof over my head? Or it might be fear of interpersonal violence. So making sure that your life has safety and security very critical to well-being. And the last area that I'll mention is the environment. And there's so many things to talk about with the environment. You might be thinking clean air, clean water, not having toxins. All those are important. Another aspect of the environment that's really important is access to nature. A lot of evidence that nature heals. E.O. Wilson described in his writings the biophilia hypothesis, that as human beings, we are literally drawn to nature. And so the environment in which we are, very important in terms of well-being. So each of these areas that I've talked about can actually be applied not only to our individual lives, but also to organizations and communities. So if you were to think of a college campus, if you were embarking on further education at a college or university or a technical school, a really important question to ask might be, not only can I get an education there that will give me the knowledge and skills to do what I want to do in the world, but will I emerge a better human being? So does that university invest in the well-being of the faculty and staff as well as the students? So you might be thinking about, in the area of health, will I be able to eat healthy and will I be able to exercise? Is there clarity of purpose within this university? Will I be able to form the kind of relationships that will be help me thrive and help me flourish? Is there a sense of community on that campus? Are issues of safety and security attended to? And what is the environment? And is the environment going to be conducive to my learning, to my growing, and to my healing? If you were thinking about a job and thinking about moving into a business or corporation, a place of employment, be thinking of asking those same questions. Is there clarity of purpose? What's the health of the organization? What are the quality of the relationships? Same questions can be addressed. Well-being can also be looked at from the standpoint of cities and states. And I have to say that we are very fortunate to be in Minnesota and in the Twin Cities. These are some well-being metrics that are interesting. We are the #1 bike-friendly city. We just beat out Portland, Oregon for that. We are the 2nd healthiest state in the nation, the 3rd best state for well-being, the 4th happiest state in America, and the 4th best city in which to get a job. I thought those two might be related. The 7th best city in the nation to be an artist. That was actually a poll where Minneapolis was ranked number 7. And this last one is interesting. Minneapolis was also ranked as the best parks in the United States. And that was beating out cities like Chicago and New York and San Francisco. So you can clearly say here in Minnesota that we are above average in terms of this. Well-being is also being looked at a global level. So this is not something that is being looked at truly only in the United States or only in our own lives. Globally, Canada has an index of well-being. The Netherlands has a life situation index. And Australia, the UK, Finland, France, Italy, Japan, New Zealand, and Luxembourg are all in the process of developing well-being indices for their country. So it's a huge topic. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama was on the University of Minnesota campus a few years ago. And His Holiness in his writing and in his speaking often talks about well-being and makes the link between well-being and happiness. Dedicate yourself to the well-being of others and you will find happiness. The more we care for the happiness of others, the greater our sense of well-being becomes. So I really encourage you to think about how can you cultivate and nurture well-being in your own life. I think it's one of the most important ways to expand your potential. But equally important, I encourage you to think about how can you support the well-being of those around you. Your family, your friends, your community, the nation, and ultimately the planet. Thank you very much.